Hey guys, check out this interview that I had recently with Uzair Qidwai, who is the CEO of Cent Finance. They're working on some very cool stuff in the blockchain space, a lot of very interesting things on DeFi, and really trying to create some very unique things within the cryptocurrency kind of space. We had a conversation about DeFi, which we got quite in depth. So if that's something that you're interested in, we had a fantastic conversation that I think you'll enjoy very much. Hope you enjoy. Okay, so we're here with Uzair Qidwai from Cent Finance. Definitely someone who knows a lot about the DeFi space and about crypto as a whole. I think a great person to learn from about the topic. So Uzair, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your company and what you're up to?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Uzair. As Rob mentioned, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Cent Finance. We're a non-custodial DeFi wallet, and we're also building a decentralized exchange to facilitate crypto to fiat and crypto to crypto trading. And yeah, I would love to talk to you guys a little bit more today about what's going on in the world of DeFi and what it is and what makes it different and how you can get involved.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So do you want to tell us like a little bit about DeFi? It's the hot topic right now. Everyone loves to talk about DeFi, but I don't think a lot of people understand what it is truly. But I think if anyone does, it's, I know it very well. So do you want to explain to us a little bit about what is DeFi and why does it matter?
Sure. Yeah, so DeFi currently is an umbrella term that's being used to talk about the financial applications that are being built using blockchain or similar technologies. So the term itself is short for decentralized finance. And what it utilizes is not just existing blockchain platforms, but there's a whole stack of technology. So you'll have the blockchain layer, then the application layer, and the aggregation layer. So these three layers essentially leverage blockchain and crypto assets to allow for people to do financial transactions in novel ways.
Cool, interesting. So there's a lot to unpack in that, right? It's I feel like that's kind of the traditional definition of it, right? But so how is it going to impact finance then, right? Like how is this how is it going to change the way that finance is being done currently?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the traditional system of finance, what we currently see in banks and governments, it's more of a hub and spoke model. So if you think of a wheel and think about how it has that hub in the center and different spokes, it is a very centralized system. So it creates single points of failure along many different financial processes. What DeFi allows is it allows for a peer-to-peer system using software and crypto assets to facilitate those same transactions in a new way. So it de-risks and decentralizes existing financial infrastructure.
Okay, so de-risking. So it sounds kind of like Napster for finance kind of thing, right? Do you think that's like an accurate description of it? Like,
Yeah. I mean, it's more peer-to-peer. So disintermediation is one of the core principles of DeFi. So in existing systems, if you look at trading or investing, you'll see there's a lot of intermediaries like registrars or custodians. And DeFi allows software to overcome those existing barriers, if you will, and additional layers that are not necessary by using blockchain, which is essentially a trustless technology. So you don't have to have a custodian hold your assets. You can actually just use software for that purpose. It's a lot more reliable because there's no bias. It executes 100% of the time, and it always reaches a conclusion based on consensus from the multiple parties that are involved in a transaction.
okay. So I'm assuming, one thing I've always heard about DeFi, the thing that stuck with me and I'm sure there's a lot more to it than this, but just reducing transaction costs, right? Would you agree with that? Like I think that's probably a big part of it, because if we have these financial institutions involved, they take like a really big cut, right? So what are your thoughts on that, like the economic implications and all and whatnot?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think one of the key things to remember is it's not just one single function or one single effect that this technology has on traditional finance. So let's take an example, right? So for example, if you were to issue a bond using traditional financial infrastructure, currently it takes T+2 days, so up to 48 hours after you make a purchase is when you actually get possession of what you got or what you paid for. With blockchain and DeFi, that can be reduced to T+10 minutes or T+2 minutes in some cases, because it allows for a more direct interaction between the buyer and the seller, removing all these intermediaries that add costs, inefficiencies, and time delays, and additional risk to any process. The same thing can be said about Forex trading or buying equity. Essentially, DeFi relies heavily on market participants to facilitate and expedite these transactions efficiently.
Very interesting. Cool. I never even thought about that. Yeah, that's a very interesting example. 48 hours for a bond. I guess you could say the same thing with like wire transfers, right? Wire transfers are like $30 to send money across the world, and takes like I remember I did this recently, trying to send money from, I think it was Canada to US or vice versa, and it was something like $30. Like, why is this $30, right? First of all, and second of all, it took 24 hours to get over. Like, do we not have like supercomputers already? Like, what's the deal here, right? And I guess DeFi it can solve that problem, right?
Yeah, so that's one of many use cases DeFi is being used for. So Remittance is very, very popular. Different wallet companies facilitate that. And then, I could talk a little bit more about how blockchains work, but that I think is a session in itself. So to keep it a high level, essentially the blockchain technology allows for very quick transfers across borders, and in a way that it's really not prone to any kind of fraud or your funds being lost. So it's very, very reliable, very, very quick, and also extremely inexpensive. Again, going back to one of the core principles of DeFi, which is disintermediation, by removing intermediaries, governments, and other parties that could heavily influence transferring funds from one place to another. DeFi can achieve this a lot cheaper, quicker, and faster.
That's really cool. Definitely see some huge value there. So what are maybe we can get some examples here, right? So you did the bond example, right? I think that makes a lot of sense, right? We speed that up and reduce all these intermediaries, make it a lot cheaper, right? Faster, cheaper, better, right? Sounds good to me. Remittances, sending money across countries. What other examples have you seen? The applications of DeFi, like more like concrete examples, right?
Yeah, that's definitely something we could talk about. So one of the most popular applications to emerge from DeFi, I'd say in the past 12 to 24 months,
NFTs,
has been decentralized exchanges. And decentralized exchanges, also called within the DeFi space, automated market makers or AMMs. And what they allow for is for trading of different cryptocurrencies or crypto assets between counterparties using software alone. So you don't actually have a person or a group of people controlling a centralized exchange, collecting orders from both sides of the market to build an order book. What you would have is a publicly accessible pool of crypto assets that both the buyer and seller can see. And they use pre-programmed software called smart contracts to execute these trades. Now, decentralized exchange is one of the popular use cases. Another popular use case that's emerging is creation of synthetic assets. So one of the core principles of, one of the core principles DeFi is built upon is composability. And what that means is most of the software that's being used by companies within the DeFi space, and I use the term companies very loosely because there's new business models emerging because of this technology, such as DAOs. But let's just use that term company to cover, all kinds of business models. But what they've been doing is they've been using this this technology to provide different exposures. So, for example, if you look at a swap or any kind of derivative instrument, it's usually used to adjust market exposure a current asset may have for an investor. With DeFi, you can adjust your exposure in very unique ways, because instead of using binary logic like you would with fiat currency, you can actually program it to have various different kinds of payouts. And so this feature of composability not just allows you to get exposure, but then actually take it a step further and customize it a lot more based on your individual positions in a portfolio.
Interesting. So you mean kind of like doing like a tiered sort of like a mortgage-backed security kind of thing?
Yeah, so something like a mortgage-backed security can be sliced and diced and used to create different symmetric or asymmetric payoffs for investors.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like taking it to the next level. I can imagine if you could do something like that, then you can do almost anything, really.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about some of the popular use cases that are coming up, and areas that are still very young and being developed. So, for example, things like mortgages, residential mortgages. Let's take it a step back. When you go for a mortgage, there are several different counterparties. Traditionally, you're following a very well-defined legal and financial process that is step by step. What you could do is you could use software and automated contracts to expedite that exponentially. And so there's a few new DeFi players that have emerged, all around the world that are working on mortgages based on local laws and regulations. So we're going to start seeing the impact of this at the end consumer very, very quickly. Remittance is another area we already talked about. But when you specifically look at derivatives and synthetic assets, there's a lot more that can be achieved through blockchain and decentralized financial technologies than have been possible in the past. Another very commonly used term within the DeFi space is money Legos. And the reason that term is used is because it's very similar to the Lego blocks we used to play with as children. And it allows you to build very customized, personalized structures that can cater to a certain sector or segment.
Interesting. That's definitely really cool. How would you even get these like Lego blocks, right? Like, I mean, is that just code? Is it like libraries and code? Like, how does that?
So let's go back to the stack I was talking about, right? So when you look at technologies built on blockchain, you have the base layer, which is your actual blockchain. A lot of people might have heard of Ethereum blockchain. The associated cryptocurrency with that is Ether, which a lot of people might have invested in or have heard of. Bitcoin is another blockchain. They also have an associated cryptocurrency, which of the same name. And then, there's some additional blockchains like Hyperledger and Web3 Corda, which do not necessarily have cryptocurrencies associated with it, but represent that same core layer of blockchain technology. Now, once you have that blockchain in place, that allows you to do a certain level of functionality, but on top of that, you can add an additional application layer. And the application, or you could add a protocol layer for a use for a specific use case. So let's say, let's take an example. Ethereum blockchain is a layer 0 or layer 1 blockchain itself. And then on top of that, we'll use the example of a company called Synthetics that has built a protocol that allows people to build different synthetic instruments or derivatives that you wouldn't be able to build with just the blockchain alone. And then on top of that, you could build additional applications that then use those synthetic instruments that were created in the previous layer. And then you could go a step further, and then you can add aggregators that allow for better liquidity in a decentralized way. So if you look at current finance, it's because of the hub and spoke model, a lot of the liquidity is sort of segmented in different areas. Blockchain, DeFi technologies allow us to really spread that liquidity out and get more utility out of it than you could if it was held in one single pot, because of these different layers that allow for aggregation of liquidity. I know that was quite intense and technical.
I had to flex my finance brain muscles there, but it does make sense, you know. Like, let's talk about how you do that from a practical standpoint, right? So we're talking about the layers and that sort of thing. Like, is there, do I go to a specific website? Do I have to download, you know, like a library, like a code library? Am I writing this in Solidity? I think that's the language, right? Like how would I, if I wanted to do that, right? Like if right now, let's say I'm going to sit down, I'm going to dedicate the next 3 months or however long it takes in my life to build, you know, the newest smart contract, you know, super complicated mortgage-backed security based on X, Y, and Z, right? Like how would I actually do that, right? Do I go to a specific website? Do I, like, you know, code in Solidity? Like how do I, you know?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So one of the most beautiful things about DeFi and blockchain is the fact that a lot of these projects are community run. And so there's lots of opportunity for people to find a good fit for them. For example, Solidity, as you mentioned, is the language that the Ethereum blockchain uses. There's other options out there. If you look at Cardano, or if you look at, you know, let's say Algorand or Agoric, you know, these are all layer 1 blockchains that use different languages and can allow for different software developers with different backgrounds and skill sets to get involved in the community. As far as smart contracts themselves are concerned, the most popular language remains Solidity. So they have something called Ethereum Virtual Machine, which allows you to build software contracts. It's actually not that far off from existing programming skills that you may have by doing C or C++. So the learning curve is not as steep as was previously believed, and it's a lot more targeted. So it's not very difficult to get started. I think the most important thing is first figuring out the use case, and then you know, developing an intimate understanding of what it is, you know, that you would like to achieve and what are the best tools to get there. And then you evaluate all the different options and get involved in a certain community. Most of these communities will have open calls and projects for people to come and get involved, and they'd have bounties or rewards associated with them. So they'll reward you if they have an associated cryptocurrency, let's say, for example, and they want you know, to get someone externally to develop a component for them. You can actually go in, you know, put in a proposal, and you know, if you're competitive enough, you get the opportunity to start building right away with support from the community and the actual entity that you're working with.
Interesting. Okay. So layer 1 is like the Cardanos and I guess EOS would probably be another one, right?
Ethereum,
Ethereum, right?
Ledger.
So that's what you're calling layer 1, right? Yeah. And then there's layer 2, which is then that you call the application layer.
Yeah, it could be protocol or application, you know, depending on what use case you're using it for. So for financial services, there's a lot of protocols that are building specific things to do on Ethereum, for example. And then you could have an additional application layer on top, or you don't
Is the
necessarily.
solidity? That's the applications of solidity, right?
Solidity is the language that you're using to build smart contracts. Application would be, a specific thing that you want the software to do, whether it's, let's say, an equity issuing platform or a bond issuing platform, for example.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I could, now I see how that can go even layers up, because now I can use those applications in my other application.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, that makes sense. It's almost like using APIs, right? It's
Yes,
like,
exactly. That's exactly
right.
how it is.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So same way that I can use, Twilio as an API to send and receive text messages, right? I
Correct.
could use, I don't know what the names of them are, right? Maybe we can name one. I don't know if you know them, but
Yeah, so let's just stick with the synthetics example.
yeah.
Synthetics is a great example because what they're doing is building synthetic instruments or derivatives on Ethereum blockchain. So they call themselves a protocol, which means then you can use that protocol for specific purposes that you need to. So, in this case, you'd have Ethereum as the first layer, then synthetics on top. And then if you want, you can add an aggregator on top to allow for other things that you want to sort of interact with each other. Another use case might be looking at decentralized exchanges on Ethereum. So you have the Ethereum layer, you have the decentralized exchange, which has a very specific purpose. Like, for example, allowing people to swap tokens, one cryptocurrency for another, or do things like liquidity mining or yield farming. And it allows for all these different pots of money to act like one. It's very much like what Uber did with taxi cabs. It allows for a whole bunch of group of people to work together and utilize a common factor. In this case, it's liquidity. In Uber's case, it was manpower.
Interesting. That's a cool way to put it. That like definitely makes a lot. Yeah, so it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Instead of one cab company, it's the bank, you call in and you need to order the cabs. You can call into Uber, which gives you access to many different technically cab companies, right? In decentralized fashion. I think that's a really interesting analogy, actually. Really cool. I like that. Cool. Okay. So yeah, this is obviously super fascinating, and now I want to sit down and learn Solidity, obviously, which I already have wanted to for a while, and now you want to make me want to do it even more. But like, okay, so I guess we don't have too much time left, so let's talk about two more things. Let's talk about what obviously there's going to be some limitations to this, right? This sounds like, and for any panacea, it's like we get there in strides, right? So what would you say are like the limitations as of right now?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, being a startup in the DeFi space and actually having worked in blockchain prior, for now, the past 4 or 5 years, one of the biggest things that we've seen that stifles innovation in this space is regulation. The regulators have been slow to come in and give people guidance. They've been quick to shut down companies, and instead of actually helping new companies get started and giving them clear expectations and guidelines to work with, they've been sort of just catching up on learning about the different implications that this technology can have. So, for us, and in an ideal world, we would like to see more clear regulation and standards get into the place. Another key sort of area or problem that has limited growth in this space has been the prevalence of scam projects. There've been a lot of companies that come in, start off in an anonymous way because the technology allows you to actually offer services with complete anonymity, and this has not been a good thing for the spaces in general, because there's been a lot of situations where money has been stolen or lost by people who created the project. So that's another very big factor. And third, I would say, is general, resistance to change, both by businesses and consumers. Most people are comfortable with the existing system, and without specific knowledge about how this technology can make people's lives better, they're suspicious of the change, and they want to keep doing things the way they have been doing. But we both know, having worked in finance and tech, fintech specifically, that is not something that drives innovation.
Absolutely not. Let me guess. I can name the people who are trying to stop this sort of thing. So let me guess. Maybe it's the people that stand to lose from it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That kind of makes sense, no?
I mean, let's not forget, right? Blockchain was born after the subprime crisis of 2008, 2009. One of the first messages within the Bitcoin blockchain was about a bailout package that was being processed at the time. So, technology is normally born out of necessity. And I'd say the past 10 years, and being in blockchain for the past 5 myself, I would say it definitely was born out of a need for more transparent, more equal, and efficient systems with less ability for people to take advantage of the common man.
Yeah, makes sense. Definitely. Or spend $6 trillion on, okay, so definitely really cool stuff, and the limitations make sense. I mean, we hear about the regulatory stuff all the time and scams all the time, right? Those are definitely big ones. But I feel like improving, right? At least I've been in the space for a while. I feel like the guidance is getting better and hacks are becoming less frequent. Not to say they don't exist anymore, but less so. At least from what I've noticed. So it seems like progress being made. But let's talk about what you're doing specifically in this space, right? You and I know each other. You've explained this to me a few times, and I think maybe given this context, maybe this time I'll like fully be able to grasp, exactly what Cent is striving towards, right? So do you want to kind of talk about your company and kind of the vision behind it and where you want to be with this company in a couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a good segue into Cent, because Cent was born from these limitations that we just talked about. So, whether it's complexity or suspicion or resistance to change, there's also technical limitations to blockchain. So if you look at Bitcoin, it can't process the same amount of transactions as, for example, the Visa or the MasterCard network does. And Ethereum came along and improved upon that, and there have been some new blockchains that have come since then and have improved upon existing infrastructure. And so our vision at Cent is simply to make DeFi accessible for regular people. We want people to be able to access financial services regardless of their geography, their gender, or socioeconomic background, and use the same financial services that are accessible to people in the developed world. So in our quest to do that, what we have done is we try to abstract away a lot of this complicated blockchain jargon, and we try to focus on the utility that people can get from using our services. And in order to make it easier for people to get started, we actually work with layer 2 solutions, which exist to simply improve the technical ability of blockchains like Ethereum or Bitcoin. So we work with the Celo blockchain, which is focused on the unbanked and creating conditions of prosperity for all. So we work with Ethereum, we work with Celo, and we work with a few other side chains that allow for DeFi to be accessible to people that don't have millions of dollars. They allow for DeFi to be accessible to people that only have cell phones and maybe don't have the ability to buy a computer, or they live in a geography somewhere where there's no banking services, and they need to be able to transfer value to each other. And so Cent is essentially a starting point for people that want to get into DeFi. They want to, let's say, use it for use cases like remittance, or be able to do business with each other in communities where these things are difficult to access. For people, in other parts of the world that may not have those problems, we strive to just abstract away the complexity that's associated with getting started with blockchain. People don't know where to go. There's thousands of exchanges, thousands of different cryptocurrencies, and keeping in mind, the scam projects we talked about, the regulatory limitations, it's just not very easy for people to get started. So we're striving to build an environment where people can just come in and with a click, much like they can with existing fintech applications, they can get into DeFi and be able to really extract the utility and the benefit it has to offer.
Cool, awesome. So how would that look like from a practical standpoint, right? So I guess it'd be like a website, app, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so we are, by definition, we're a non-custodial DeFi wallet, which means we allow you to be able to buy cryptocurrencies in a completely non-custodial way, then store them. We're also building a decentralized exchange to add additional functionality to what our wallet offers. And then you can actually get exposure to different crypto assets, different cryptocurrencies, be able to trade them with other people, use different strategies, get different exposures. Our decentralized exchange or automated market maker has features that allow for people to get exposure to multiple different cryptocurrencies or crypto assets, which kind of emulates an ETF or a fund that has multiple securities within it. So, yeah.
That's awesome. I know you guys have an app on the App Store too, right? So we could download Cent from the App Store, CENT, right?
Yes. So Cent Finance is the name of our company. The Cent wallet is available for download on both Apple and Google Play. We're not available globally. Certain countries, because of our company being based out of London, UK, we have to make sure that we don't serve geographies like Syria, Iraq, Iran, North Korea, but for the most part, Cent is available globally for people in every community to be able to access cryptocurrencies and this new world of DeFi.
Cool, awesome. All right. Well, this has been a very interesting conversation. Hopefully many to come as well. This is very interesting stuff to me. As I said, I definitely want to start learning some Solidity now after this conversation. So thank you very much for being on. This is going to be on YouTube, but we'll probably put this up on podcast and all that sort of stuff as well. Thank you for this conversation, Uzair, and for anyone out there, make sure you download the app. And I think you said you're hiring, you're looking for interns as well.
Yes, absolutely. So if you want to get involved in DeFi, you want to be a part of the project, please go on cent.finance and you can download the app there, follow us on Twitter, join our Discord, and become a part of this movement.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Rob, for having me.
Hopefully, yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, hopefully we can do a few more of these in the near future.
Yeah, it sounds great. I'm gonna keep learning about the stuff that's changing the world.
Fantastic.
Great. Awesome.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good one.